Okay, this is the purpose of this video is to just give you a quick algebra review. There are at least 3 concepts in algebra that are used in this problem that we'll be seeing quite a bit throughout the calculus class, and also to get you used to my videos. So the original problem in class that we had today was I gave you a function and I asked you to substitute R1 and R2 into the expression and algebraically simplify it. So the original expression involved these 2 functions and this denominator. Okay, so we're going to substitute in, that's the first step, R2 into the equation. So substituting, which is, an important algebraic concept, R2 into the equation. For I, you get, and keep your subscript straight, R2 squared, right, minus, substitute in R1 into the equation, divided by R squared minus R1. Alright, so the first key concept here is substitution. Everyone should know how to substitute into a function. The next concept that we're going to see is, well, okay, now how do I algebraically simplify this? There's not much, let me grab another color, there's not much that you can do with the denominator. It is what it is. But look at where things are more complicated. The numerator is clearly much more complicated. So the next concept that you'll invoke is finding a common denominator so that you can combine the terms. So, looking at the denominators of both of these fractions, or rational functions, you can hopefully see that the common denominator would be 4 pi r2 squared r1 squared. Combining that all under one common denominator, the first term, remember, whatever's left over, p r1 squared minus p r2 squared. Alright, one quick way to check this, let me grab another color, is to make sure that you get back to the original problem. So if I look at this, and I cancel out the r1 squares, right, I get back to this. Grab another one. If I look at this, right, I'd cancel out the R2s, and I get back to here. So indeed we have this thing simplified and put under a common denominator. Alright, so the next concept that we're going to use is, well, you could do 2 things. You can factor out a common factor. Let me rewrite, since I played around with this. P1 squared minus P R2 squared all over 4 pi R2 squared R1 squared divided by R2 minus R1. Alright, so that's the step after we found the common denominator. You can pull out, we're still working on the numerator because that's still the messiest thing. You can pull out a P, and you're left with R1 squared minus R2 squared all over 4 pi R2 squared R1 squared, and I'm going to do one thing in one step. Alright, that's a good clean way of executing algebra. You do one thing in one step. Alright, so here I factored out a common factor. Alright, so finding a common denominator, factoring out a common factor, these are all, common algebraic concepts. What I would do next, I still see a mess on the top. I'm going to look at factoring this binomial, right? Because I see on the bottom there's an R2 minus an R1. There's got to be something that I can do up top in order to cause an elimination. So, and it doesn't matter what step you do it in, what order that you do it in, I should say. But I'm going to factor this binomial. It's the difference of two squares, two perfect squares, so I'm going to, hopefully you remember that this thing is going to factor into r1 minus r2, r1 plus r2, all over 4 pi r2 squared, r1 squared, and divided by r2 minus r1. Alright, so that step, I factored the difference of perfect squares, right? Next, I've got division on the bottom, so I'm going to take the multiply by the reciprocal, so I can start to hopefully see something emerge here and clean it up a bit. Now, this looks very close to this, but be careful because the order is not quite right. So I know I can cancel them out if I employ one more algebraic trick, and that is factoring out a negative sign. And this exercise is time well spent because in my math lab, you're gonna, and for all standardized testing that you ultimately will be taking, it's important to be able to recognize the algebraic equivalent. So if I pull out a negative sign, this becomes 1 over, you know what, I'm going to write it this way so I don't confuse you guys. 1 over negative r1 minus r2. Now I can cross these out, and the answer, I'll write it in red. The simplified version of this is minus p r1 plus r2. All over 4 pi r squared, r2 squared, r1 squared. And that's your answer. So I hope this little bit of algebra review helps you.